Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you for demonstrating the political courage to hold these hearings. And I must say I'm mystified by the controversy that has followed from this. It was said by one of the members that we're investigating Muslims. Nothing could be farther from the truth. We're investigating the radicalization of Muslim youth in the United States. Does anybody on this panel disagree with the notion that the radicalization of Muslim youth in the United States poses a threat to our homeland security? I take it by your silence that you agree with the idea that the radicalization of Muslim youth in the United States poses a direct threat to the security and safety of our homeland security. We know that 36 Americans have left the United States, mostly from Minnesota, to join forces in Somalia, to receive training under al-Shabaab, to receive training by al-Qaeda. And I guess the question is, what kind of a threat does that pose to us here in the United States? I want to read to you what was just recently said by Mr. Olson, who's the nominee to lead the National Counterterrorism Center, in his confirmation hearing just on Tuesday. He said, al-Shabaab's bombing last year targeting Westerners shows the group is willing and capable of striking outside Somalia and therefore poses a significant threat. So my question to, I think, Mr. Folk and Mr. Jocelyn is, how big of a threat is this to the United States? I mean, there are those who will say that these individuals are leaving the United States to join these national forces in a civil war, and that is their main focus. Their threat, or their focus is not on posing a threat to the United States. How would you respond to that?
Thank you, Congressman. As I set forth in my written remarks, I believe that the threat that we need to be aware of is the fact that the terrorist training camps run by al-Shabaab teach their participants how to kill people, how to utilize weapons, how to build bombs, and in addition to the military training, provide an ideological indoctrination that teaches that it's okay to do that. And so the ability of one of those individuals to return to the United States and to put into practice that training is a threat.
And Mr. Jocelyn?
Well, you know, it's tough to say how big of a threat, but I certainly take it seriously. I think any al-Qaeda affiliated party, we shouldn't downplay the threat. But, you know, earlier we were talking about the Uganda bombings, for example, okay, which were a very personal connection. The brigade that carried out the Uganda bombings was named the Saleh Ali Saleh Naban Brigade, okay? Now, Naban was a top al-Qaeda operative and Shabaab operative as well. He was killed in a U.S. airstrike in 2009. The brigade was named after him because he's so legendary in Shabaab and al-Qaeda circles. Well, the recruits from Minneapolis who went to Somalia, according to the Department of Justice, were actually trained under Naban. In fact, the Department of Justice just on the 16th, I believe, came out with its plea deal with a Minneapolis-based recruiter for Shabaab. And in the materials, it said that they named a senior member of al-Qaeda in East Africa who conducted the training. That's Naban, if you look at this. So when you're talking about the threat, you're talking about individuals recruited in Minneapolis who go to Shabaab in Somalia and receive training from one of the all-time sort of al-Qaeda operatives in Somalia.
So that al-Qaeda, al-Shabaab connection, I think, in my judgment, does pose a threat to our interest here in the United States. Obviously, AQAP has a direct interest in attacking the United States. So am I correct in saying that it's that connection that concerns you?
That's exactly right. And I think my colleague here, Mr. Folk, very succinctly said, you just don't know when they're going to cross the line from aspirational to actually trying to pull something off. Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib, you know, nobody in the U.S. intelligence community, according to the Senate intelligence report, had thought that somebody like that was going to come along from AQAP and try and attack us. And all of a sudden he's on board Flight 253 trying to blow it up.
And clearly al-Awlaki is becoming the emerging threat on the scene, in my judgment. He's radicalizing Muslim youth over the internet here in the United States. And what easier way to do it? If you can't get into the country with travel documents, why not radicalize people already here? Last question, how can we track these individuals that we know have left the United States and are in Somalia now to ensure they don't come back to the United States and commit acts of terrorism?
That's a difficult question. I think there's a lot of good work being done on that, and you know, like you can't say that all the individuals that go off to fight aren't being tracked. It's tough to say. it becomes very difficult. The problem is that once you leave the country and you go into these, the badlands of Africa, basically, where all this warfare, it's tough to say who could get a false passport or a false visa or something like that. I mean, there's just so many potential possibilities there. And so I wouldn't want to speculate on how best to track all these guys. I think the FBI, the intelligence community does a fairly good job of tracking it. But again, you just don't know when somebody like Umar Farouk Abdul-Muttalib will come along.
Just to,
Thanks, Chairman.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, just to add to that point, we should actually utilize the incredible sacrifice that's been made by Somali Americans on the other side of the equation, fighting al-Shabaab. The current Somali Prime Minister is from Mr. Chairman's state of New York. The defense chief is from Ohio, and there's a number of people from California and also Somali Canadians. So we can utilize that intelligence to track some of the...
It's an excellent point. The most effective weapon is, I think, the moderate Muslim against the radical.